Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, at the end of every episode, I always ask everybody listening to share their stories with me, ask questions, and offer an open invitation to come on here and join me so we can all learn more about areas we don't associate with technology and how those areas are actually being transformed by it. So today, I've invited Grant Morgan onto the podcast, who emailed me after listening to this show for some time, and I invited him on to open our eyes on a few things today as we learn more about technology's role. For example, antibiotic soaps, sanitizers are all driving a deadly new wave of antibiotic-resistant infections, or at least they're blamed for that, because harsh chemical disinfectants can create hazardous environments for staff and employees, and their overuse is also blamed for harming wildlife around the world. It's not sustainable. So I've invited Grant onto the podcast today to discuss the urgent need for environmentally friendly disinfection and talk about the advances in technology that are making it possible. Quite an eye-opener, this one, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Utah, where Grant is waiting to speak with us now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Neil. Been a listener for a long time, so it's a little bit surreal to be here. But my name is Grant Morgan. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of R0. And fundamentally, R0 is a biosafety technology company. And so we were founded out of the pandemic, and we exist to reduce the spread of infectious disease in common spaces, basically everywhere you can't go right now. But our mission is to really evolve this disinfection industry and change the paradigm around the relationship between the indoor spaces, which we as humans spend 90+% of our lives in, and the way that they make us sick or keep us healthy. And so, we're using a lot of technology and innovation and injecting it into this industry to keep people safer and ultimately reduce sick days, improve productivity and quality of life. So, yeah.
Cool. And it is such a big talking point at the moment. I'm going to love digging deeper and finding out more information about that. But as you've listened before, I'm sure you know by now, it's not just about the technology. I'm always fascinated by the guest's origin story and where their passion for technology came from and what put them on the path they're on today. So I've got a feeling you're going to have a story too, right?
Everyone's got a story, but what's absolutely happy to share it. But what's interesting, and I'll kind of Tarantino this, but what's interesting is this this business and this journey with R0 has been sort of this aligning of the stars in a number of senses, and I'll collect the pieces as I go here. But one of my co-founders, Ben, his wife actually bought a book for us three co-founders called The Power of Moments, and it like really. It does a really good job of articulating the sort of serendipity of this situation, but it feels like it was meant to be. But I'll tell you why. So I am a mechanical engineer by training and by nature. I call myself an engineer. I love taking things apart. I love Legos. I got a couple of Legos on my desk, but went to school for engineering. When I graduated, I wanted to apply what I had learned in a way that had some altruistic aspect to it and would help people at the end of the day. And so I got into healthcare, and I got into medical device and pharmaceutical manufacturing for a company called Abbott. At the time, 90,000 person healthcare conglomerate, phenomenal company, met a lot of great people, learned a bunch of really, really valuable lessons there, and ultimately decided that I wanted a larger scope of responsibility, wanted to see what I was capable of. And so I ended up jumping ship to a smaller medical device startup called NDC. I think they're now called Confluent, but there I got to sort of stand up and run the neurovascular value stream. And so we would basically design, develop, manufacture medical devices for the big dogs. So like Stryker, J&J, Medtronic, Abbott, and the like. And so my team would take basically a napkin sketch, figure out how to make it, take the company through FDA trials and submissions, and then scale up the manufacturing and get to steady state. So that was sort of full product life cycle ownership and experience there, and I loved it. But what I figured at the end of that journey was I wanted to try something in an unregulated industry, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. But I had a friend at the time from college who was starting a company called iCracked, and he said, "Why don't you come work at iCracked?" I said, "What would I do?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "Cool, I'm in." And so I jumped ship and was on the founding team at iCracked. And so I got to build and lead the product and engineering teams there. And that's really where I fell in love with software. So our company was an on-demand technical services company. So we had a couple thousand technicians all over the United States, Canada, and Europe. And when you broke your phone or needed your IoT smart home setup installed, you'd press a button, we'd send somebody out to you, and they'd come fix it on the spot. And so worked on that for about 7 years. We were eventually acquired by Allstate. And so I spent a couple months getting the ship to port, and ended up jumping ship again, starting another company in late 2019, I believe. And so fast forward a year and a half to the pandemic, and I get a call from one of my co-founders, Ben, who actually was on my board at iCracked. And he was a board member that I had always looked up to, respected, always wanted to try to figure out how to work with. Never thought it would be in the capacity of him operating with us. And so when he called, I picked up the phone, and he had this idea for sort of iCracked for disinfection, where we would go sort of equip an independently contracted workforce with differentiated disinfection equipment to secure or keep safe the spaces that were getting locked down at the time. And so this was very, very beginning of the pandemic. And so we started thinking about it and drawing parallels to some of the other tragic events in history that have changed the course of history. And we figured this is a moment in time where everything is changing. We started drawing parallels to 9/11, for example, where we lost roughly 3,000 American lives. Out of that, we basically stood up the entire Department of Homeland Security and the entire Homeland Security apparatus, including TSA. We put air marshals on flights. You still to this day can't take a water bottle or wear your shoes through security, and there were a number of companies that were built to support that apparatus as well. I think like the Palantirs of the world, and so we thought that there would be similar societal and infrastructural changes coming out of COVID, given the global nature of it, the massive, massive loss of lives, the economic devastation that was happening at the time too. And so we wanted to do something to jump in and help. And at about that time, as we were ideating around this iCrack for disinfection idea, we brought in our third co-founder, Eli Harris, who Eli is a Forbes 30 under 30 entrepreneur. He's done this a couple times. He's extremely impressive and very, very special. And I actually met him at iCracked too. So he was the first non-Chinese employee at DJI, the drone company. And at the time, DJI was, a bunch of consumers were breaking their drones. They would approach, and Eli ran international BD. He approached us and said, basically, "Hey, do you want to stand up a drone repair program?" And the program never materialized, but he was one of those people you become fast friends with and keep in your back pocket and try to figure out how to work together in the future. And fast forward to R0, and we figured it out finally. But so all three of us got together, and we ended up calling someone within our network. His name's Dr. Richard Wade. He's now our chief scientist. And Dr. Wade is a world-renowned expert in infection prevention and toxicology and risk management and mitigation. He was the head of OSHA for over a decade. He's taught at Harvard and Oxford, and he's got literally a 13-page resume of accolades that he and we are very proud of. But Dr. Wade helped us get smart on this industry and helped us sort of go on this journey to understand what types of organizations do infection prevention particularly well. And so we started honing in on hospitals. And ever since hospitals have existed, they are a communal gathering place for the sick, essentially. And they have a tall task keeping the patients safe from each other, keeping the frontline workers safe from the patients and the different pathogens that they are dealing with. And the best in breed hospitals, what we learned was best in breed hospitals that do the best at this use UVC light. And UVC light, turns out, is over 100-year-old technology. In fact, the 1903 Nobel Prize for Medicine was awarded to Niels Finsen for the use of UVC to treat lupus. And it's been used in wastewater treatment applications since the 1910s, air and surface applications since the 20s and 30s. And there's a mountain of scientific precedent and evidence proving the germicidal efficacy of UVC. So we're thinking to ourselves, like, this is perfect. Like, there's no chemicals. It can treat large rooms. It's highly effective. Let's go forward with this. And so we started working on this device that you see behind me. And for the listeners who can't see, it's about a 6.5 foot tall. Think of it as big light bulbs with reflectors on wheels. It's a little bit more sophisticated than that, but paint the picture for you. But basically, this is the type of device that they use in these hospital rooms when they turn over patient rooms. And so what they do is they'll wheel it into the room and they plug it into a wall and they run it for 5 to 7 minutes, and it kills everything. In fact, there are no known UVC resistant microorganisms on the planet. So it'll kill bacteria, mold, fungi, viruses, anything. And so it's the last thing that they do, kind of the final clean in that terminal patient room cleaning process. And so we set out to build one of these. And along the way, and I promise this is almost done, along the way, one of the things that we realized about this industry as we started thinking about who our competitors are is this industry is dominated by 100-plus-year-old companies. And it's companies like Clorox, Ecolab, SC Johnson, Diversity, all the way down the list. And what those companies all have in common is fundamentally they're commodity chemical manufacturers, and they don't have technology and innovation in their DNA. And that's not to say anything bad about them. They built successful businesses. They're phenomenal brands, world-class, and they've done a lot of good. But we, being technologists and having lived a couple lives in the startup world, thought that this industry should be managed with the same level of sophistication and technology that we've become accustomed to with virtually every other industry. And if you think about it, we today are still using the same chemicals to fight the coronavirus in 2020 and 2021. Same chemicals that we used to fight the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic over a century ago. And so in that time period, we sent people to space and the moon. We have, created autonomous vehicles. We can now shoot rockets into space and land them on autonomous drone boats to reuse them. But we're still using the same commodity chemicals. And so that's kind of that was kind of a light bulb moment for us where we realized, look, we have a huge opportunity at a time where this is sorely needed to inject technology and innovation into this space and do disinfection and specifically infection prevention better, more efficiently, more effectively than it's ever been done before. We can do it autonomously and we can do it without chemicals. So that's my long-winded origin story.
Man, what a great story! And you did mention early on in that story the book. Was it Powerful Moments? Was it? Did you say
the Power of Moments? Yeah,
the Power of Moments. And I think that's so important because I've interviewed over 1,600 people on this podcast, and I think the one thing that everybody's got in common, and it's a question I often get asked, is serendipity. And it's almost like you're put in certain situations, and you are where you're meant to be at that right moment in time, and the universe almost gives you a nudge in the right direction. If you were to sit down and think about how the three of you all met and what it would lead to now, you would go insane. But it does feel that there's almost something else at work there, isn't there?
It certainly feels that way, and I think that there's a little bit of luck. There's a lot of hard work, but what's the saying? Like, luck is the intersection of opportunity and preparation, I think, and that's certainly how we feel. As we've all been working real hard to be the best entrepreneurs that we can, the best business people that we can, and we've been opportunistic about collecting people that we want to work with in the future. And it's just it feels like there's something else at work. We're really lucky, and I can't explain how perfect it is. Every kind of the stars aligning.
And we are all surrounded by so much change at the moment. We've gone from working in offices to remote working to now hybrid working, going back into the office. And I think the days of just going in and having one particular job role for X amount of years is gone as well. Everyone's got to continuously evolve. So for businesses that are learning how to adapt and evolve and getting people back into the workplace, and just hearing about R0 for the first time, can you tell me a little bit more about the kind of things you're helping them with right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned earlier that our observation was that, look, this is a moment in time throughout history where everything's going to change. And one of our one thesis we had about how things are going to change was that coming out of COVID, that there was going to be a lot of lingering psychological scar tissue in the eyes and the minds of the public. And not only are people going to want to physically be safer in the spaces that they go back to, but they're going to want to feel safer as well. And so I think that what has happened and absolutely is proving true is that that humans are becoming more aware of how the spaces where we spend our time impact their overall health, and how surfaces and air within a building and ventilation can all impact your health and wellness. And the fact of the matter is, this problem has existed long before COVID. And the evidence is clear. 40 million Americans get the flu every year, and somehow we've just accepted that that's normal. MRSA, our staph, kills more people in the United States alone than AIDS, Parkinson's, emphysema, and murder combined. And so we have not done a good job at keeping ourselves safe in essentially our natural habitat, being indoor environments. And so one of the things that has changed is that the public is more aware. And aware of not only COVID, but how all of these other pathogens that are endemic to their spaces, and the role of the facilities manager in an organization that manages a space has changed as well. And what we saw is, in a very short period of time, a facilities manager is now tasked with being an epidemiologist, and the scope of their role has increased, and they need tools. And those tools are the things that we're building. And, it doesn't have to be the case that the building that you work in actually gets you sick. Your building can actually fight back. Your building can play offense. And what we mean by that is and actually probably more helpful if I kind of talk about when we were conceptualizing this, we took a step back and wanted to whiteboard, what should disinfection look like in 2020 and beyond. And to us, that looks like a lot more data and data science, and that's to sort of understand what's happening within a space and derive actionable insight from that, and quantify risk and be able to do things with that data automatically and continuously. It looks like a lot more IoT connected hardware. So that's installed hardware in our customer spaces that both collects information about how that space is being utilized, where the traffic is flowing, where the population density is high, and therefore where the risk is high. But it also generates data based on the use of our products as well. So that data is super powerful, and we all know, I'm sure your listeners are very familiar with the power of data and what you can do with it. But the other thing we figured that this industry needs is software. And that software is to feed those actionable insights back to the customers. It's to automate workflows, and to also establish trust and make this historically invisible process, being disinfection, visible for the first time. And so one of the things that has changed is not only do facilities managers, janitorial and custodial staffs, and organizations of all shapes and sizes have to step their game up in terms of disinfection. People talk about this new normal or going back to normal. I've thought about that a lot, and I don't want to go back to normal. I hope we get better. I hope we learn something from this, and I hope we can all adopt a few different changes that are actually going to benefit everybody. So we think that the world has changed in that way. We are seeing that response in the market with companies that are looking to reopen their office space, businesses that are looking to reopen and get people back in the doors. But what we're telling them and what we're selling is absolutely resonating with them. Not only can you have hospital grade disinfection that works autonomously and continuously to protect all the occupants of your space, but you can also have tools to rebuild trust. So when our products generate data, we're effectively creating this auditable trail of disinfection activities that our customers have taken our software and actually shown that data to their customers and patrons to prove that something was done to keep them safe. And we're actually seeing businesses improve and ramp up and return to their same pre-COVID economic conditions faster by virtue of articulating that they're doing something different and using R0's platform. So long-winded answer, but fundamentally, world's changed, public's more aware, and businesses have not only a responsibility, but an obligation even to step their game up and do something different to keep people safe.
And you bang on the money there, and attitudes are changing all over the world. And I think it's been a big wake-up call for many people over the last 18 months. And we are starting to talk about using technology to increase sustainability and be more environmentally friendly and thinking about the planet that we all share together. And one thing that we don't really talk about is things like disinfection and the chemicals that are being used. So as this is a tech podcast, can you tell me more about the advances in technology are finally making that possible to create that more environmentally friendly disinfection?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with some of the issues with the traditional methods of disinfection, mostly chemicals. So a lot of chemical wipes exist. Those wipes are wasteful for obvious reasons. The chemicals are harmful to the environment on multiple dimensions. Not only are they harmful to produce, a lot of them use petroleum products and other sort of harmful compounds to produce, but the nature of these products is that they're consumable. And so your supply chain is also detrimental to the environment. You go through a box of 100 Clorox wipes and you got to order new ones, and you got to drive to the store. That the products had to be shipped to the store and whatnot. So there's the environmental impact of the supply chain as well. But then there's also the human impact and the societal impact of occupational exposure to these chemicals. They're not good for you to breathe in. If they kill, things on surfaces, they're probably able to kill things in your lungs and on your skin. And so what is novel and interesting about the environmental impact of what we do is our products. We actually ran a study with a third party who looked at our products, specifically our UVC products, and compared them to chemical disinfection. And the carbon footprint of R0 and our products is 217 times less than the carbon footprint of the equivalent amount of chemicals that you would need to disinfect a space. So our products, to land the plane on that and just get very specific and simple, our bulbs in our first UVC product, Arc, they last 16,000 hours. And so for most customers, that's a couple of years. And not only do they last longer and can you use them a ton of times, but we also help you recycle them. So because we track the usage of the products themselves, we know when the bulbs are at the end of life. And we'll actually send you packaging that you can take the bulbs out, replace them with the bulbs that we send you, put the used bulbs or consumables bulbs in the packaging that we send you that's pre-labeled, and it ships it off to a recycling facility where you don't have to worry about it. And those bulbs get remanufactured and recycled and put back into the supply chain. That's one thing that makes it much, much more sustainable as well. So yeah, it's a win-win.
Wow, it really is. And what are the results like compared to the old-fashioned chemical route and the solution that you're offering with the technology here? Is the disinfection results, are they the same, similar, or
better? So what's pretty wild is most people don't understand, and I didn't understand this until I really dove deep in the industry, but what most people don't understand is when they read a label of a disinfection product, like a Lysol spray or whatever, it says kills 99.9% of germs or whatever. That's regulated by the EPA, and you have to do testing to prove that you, to be able to make those label claims. But what most people don't understand is there's this concept of, it's called contact time. And so that's the amount of time that a surface has to remain visibly wet for that product to actually have the effect that it's pitching on the label. And the contact time of these chemicals are anywhere from 3 to 5 to 10 minutes in some cases. I personally have never left a chemical on a surface for that long. Most people spray them on and wipe them off. So you're actually getting this false sense of security. And I have my whole life been getting this false sense of security where you think that it's doing something, but it's not quite doing that. But what we can do not only is UVC light just as or more effective than any chemical, but we can actually validate that you delivered the amount of UVC light necessary to achieve proper disinfection. And so, that goes back to the observation that, this process has historically been invisible. So disinfection has been measured based on time, but it has nothing to do with actual risk or efficacy. And so your janitorial staff or your custodial staff comes in at night to your office and they might wipe down some surfaces. You really don't even know if they showed up, let alone how good of a job they did. Did they wipe your desk down? Did they wipe the whole thing down? Did they wipe your neighbor's desk down that they sneezed on or not? You don't really know. And for the first time ever in history, we are able to validate that a disinfection activity has been done with data that's collected by our products and generated by our products and then displayed to our customers. So not only can we make sure that we're delivering the proper dose of light to the right surfaces, but we can also prove it with data.
And you said prove it with data. Before you came on the podcast, I was doing a bit of research and I was reading about your vision for the future of disinfection. And I think you were saying it was built around a built-in digital audit trail. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that, just for the business leaders listening, on how they could measure their improvements that they're putting in?
Yeah, absolutely. So our view of the world is that disinfection should happen continuously and autonomously. So you shouldn't have to do anything. We want to remove the two most problematic pieces of historical disinfection, and that's chemicals and people. People are imperfect. Labor is expensive, and there's probably a higher leverage use of their time maintaining the facility or whatever else. But our view of the world is that we're building a suite of IoT connected disinfection hardware. It's beautiful, so it adds to your space from an architectural and visual standpoint. But think of these as sort of light fixtures that you can mount in the ceiling, fixtures that you can mount on the wall. But these products are permanently installed in your space, including sensors and things like that. And so the idea is when you come to us and you say, "Hey, I'm looking to protect my space," we'll actually audit your space. We will collect a lot of inputs about the size and shape of your space, how it's used, and we actually built a machine learning model that predicts infection risk based on those inputs. And so we can actually model your specific space, every room in your space, and we can tell you what the risk of infection is if you have one or more people infected in that space. And then what we can do is we can layer on the use of our products and model what that risk looks like with the use of our products, I should say. And we can compare the two, and that will translate to lower sick days. And at the end of the day, that's what these organizations are going to be buying. Is a reduction in sick days. So when we do that and you execute a contract, we'll come out and we'll install all of our products in your space. So we'll tell you where to put them. We'll come in, we'll install them and make them part of your building's infrastructure. And then we'll teach you how to use the software. But really, there's nothing that you need to do. It all happens autonomously and continuously. And we're reacting in real time based on how a space is used, and therefore what the risk is within that space in real time. We'll actually automate the use of our products. So what that looks like in practice is you walk into a conference room in your space, and you walk in with 8 other people. Our sensors will be able to detect, hey, there's 8 people that just walked into this space. Turn on the light fixture that's overhead that disinfects the air in real time. And we'll run it as long as people are in the room to disinfect the air in real time and reduce the risk of infection. And then when people leave the room, it'll automatically shut off and conserve lifespan, conserve energy, and adapt to the fact that there's no more risk there. Another thing that we can do that's really interesting is we can inform your operations, help them be more efficient. And so if you have, this is particularly important in this new sort of hybrid work environment world where you might have co-working desks, no assigned seating, but there's all these different models that companies are piloting right now. But the other thing we can do is basically if you have like 50 conference rooms in your space, and we know by looking at our sensor data that 20 of them have not been occupied since the last time they were disinfected, then we can tell your cleaning crews not to go waste their time and energy on those conference rooms because they haven't been occupied. And so fundamentally, our sensors can collect information about that allows us to derive risk in real time, and then we can automate the use of our products and really close that loop to create this continuous automated disinfection ecosystem within your space.
And you guys have done a fantastic job of bringing that vision to life, because I think I should highlight here that R0 became one of the fastest growing startups of 2020. But what did that recognition and success mean to you and your team?
I'll start by recapping for the readers what we have accomplished, which we are extremely proud of, but we're just getting started. So we incorporated the company in April of 2020, and right at the beginning of the pandemic. In 5 months, we designed, developed, manufactured a truly hospital-grade UVC disinfection device, brought it to market. In that time period, we raised a $15 million Series A from some world-class investors, including DBL and their partner Ira Ehrenpreis, who's on the board of Tesla and a number of other noteworthy companies. Raised the $15 million Series A. To date, we've sold nearly $20 million of this product. And last month, we actually closed a $45 million Series B funding as well. And we've grown the team to about 60 people. We're going to double before the end of the year, and we're off to the races. And so it's actually surreal to look back on that. I've worked a long time to try to be a great entrepreneur. And I've never seen anything like this. It's just moved incredibly quickly, but we've been operating like there are lives at stake, and there literally are. And that's the ultimate motivation. But what that success means to us is it's humbling, but we all have our eyes on a bigger prize. We want to create this movement, create lasting, massive global societal change around how we keep people healthy and how we think about our relationship with indoor spaces. And when we realized how archaic this industry was and what the opportunity was, that's the ultimate motivator. We don't want this to be a COVID response. COVID was the catalyst, but the opportunity is so much bigger. It's unbelievable how many people get sick, what that costs the economy, and the lost productivity, the lost time with your friends and family. So this is a universal human need, and it almost feels like a duty or an obligation, but we're really, really proud of our speed of execution and what we've done to date. But like I said, this is just the beginning, and we want to change. We want to change this industry, and we want to change the world, which sounds a little cliche for a startup founder, but this is different. It's human health. And I think it's something that we should invest in, and we should play offense instead of playing defense. And we can keep people healthier, and the evidence is there too. So that's what motivates us every day. And we know that this is the first couple of stepping stones, but we have a lot more to achieve and a lot of change to enact.
And we are surrounded by change at the moment. And a lot of people say that the speed of change is moving at a breakneck speed. But the reality is it's never going to move this slow again. So I suppose even you're going to have to continuously evolve and adapt and change with the evolving needs of your customers. So I'm curious, is there anything around the emerging technologies that you're keeping an eye on for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a whole bunch of technologies that we're working really hard to get smart on. But one of them is machine learning and AI. And so we built a machine learning team internally that is absolutely world class. Some of the best engineers I've ever worked with. But we think that can be a big differentiator. Technology and innovation are not in the DNA of the incumbents in this space. And so we're looking a lot at how do we leverage our data to automate workflows, to get smarter on infection prevention and bake more value into the products that we deliver to our customers. There are a couple of disinfection technologies that we're looking at too, some of which I can't quite talk about, but one of them, we have a product coming out this month that is the first of its kind in the world. And it's called, it's LED powered upper room UVGI product. And so basically it's a device that mounts to your wall and it creates a beam of UVC light across the top of the room. And then when people in the room breathe, that hot air that's ostensibly contaminated rises up into that beam of air, into the irradiance zone, quote unquote, and gets disinfected. And by the time that it's disinfected and cools, it comes back down into the space where you can breathe it again, and it's safe. And we think that this product should be in every classroom in the United States of America, for example, because of the cost, both operationally and the CapEx cost to retrofit HVAC systems in schools. And so, ventilation is key to preventing coronavirus and the spread of airborne viruses, but that ventilation is expensive. So when you pull in a higher percentage of outside air, especially in places with extreme climates, you either have to heat it or cool it to a comfortable temperature, which expends a lot of energy, costs a lot of money, and then you got to pump it back into the room. And on top of that, if you improve your filtration, for example, and use a higher grade filter like a MERV 13, your old HVAC system might not be able to handle that. It could actually slow down and reduce the airflow and make the room actually less safe because there's not enough fresh air coming into that room. And so there's all kinds of problems that these organizations that we're serving can't afford to address for one reason or another. And so our product actually adds between 12 and 16 air changes per hour to a room for a fraction of the cost of any alternative method. And so we'll be the first company in the world to have an LED powered device of this sort on the wall. It also operates autonomously and continuously in occupied rooms, and it's safe to use in occupied rooms. And so that's one a small sample for you. And then there's a couple more that I can't quite talk about yet, but they're absolutely game changing technologies. And I think that now that society has been focused on this problem, I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in this space. And I hope so. And the way we see the world is it's not a zero-sum game. If there are competitors that come out with other technologies and they're great and they benefit humans, like we all win. So, bring it on and we welcome the competition. And we just happen to think that we have the team to build the best tools and technologies. And we're really pioneering the creation of this sort of biotechnology, biosafety technology industry.
You've left us with a teaser there, so I'm going to have to get you back on later in the year. But we did start with your origin story, and I always like to finish the podcast by asking the guests, what was the soundtrack to that origin story? Was there a particular song that accompanied you throughout your tech journey, or just helps you get your head in the zone before going on stage or in a big meeting? Is there a song and a story you can share with us that we can add to the Spotify playlist?
Eye of the Tiger. We have not slept very much in the last 14, 15 months, and wouldn't have it any other way. It's been an incredible journey. We're incredibly lucky to have the team that we do. My co-founders are I can't express how important it is to have great co-founders, and these guys have become like family. And it hasn't been all rainbows and unicorns. And so we do have to pump each other up and pump ourselves up a lot of times when, we haven't slept more than a couple hours in the last couple of nights. But you put on Eye of the Tiger and you're in the zone. So it's intense, it's invigorating, energizing, and that's largely how we operate.
Yeah, you can't beat a good Rocky montage too, man. But before I let you go, for anyone listening that would like to find out more information about R0, contact your team about anything that we've talked about today. What's the best starting point?
Absolutely. Go to r0.com. No dash or anything. R and then zero.com. Or find me on LinkedIn, Grant Morgan at R0, and reach out, and we're happy to help. I'll connect you with the right person or answer any questions that you might have. But the world has changed, and it's time for us to take a new posture and stance towards how we keep people safe. And R0 is here to usher in that change.
Well, I always say on every episode that technology works best when it brings people together. But I also like to get people thinking differently about how we're all surrounded by technology and creating new solutions to old problems. And today, just hearing about tech's role in achieving a must-have sustainable sanitization makes so much sense. But I suspect a lot of people listening had not thought about it until today. But thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us all today.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. It's been an absolute honor, and I've really enjoyed the conversation. So thanks for having me.
Wow. I now see sanitization and disinfecting of spaces in a whole new light, and officially fascinated by that technology solution and how it can transform that space. But I'm curious, is this something you would consider for your business, for your workplace, for your building, for your event? I'd love to hear from you. And if you have any questions or you'd like to come on the podcast and share your story and help us all think differently about an area in your industry and how technology is transforming it, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So while I'm waiting for your messages to come in, it's time for me to sneak out the back door and get some R&R before I return again tomorrow with another guest for you all. So thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.